Meanwhile, a list of people connected to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein is about to be unsealed. Now, the court documents were part of a 2015 civil case filed against Epstein by Virginia Giuffre alleging sexual abuse. That list is expected to include more than 150 names.
Among the more prominent names expected to appear, former President Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew. Mr. Clinton has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing, and Prince Andrew has denied previous allegations of sexual assault. Joining us right now with more on the case and possible ramifications for those listed in the documents, attorney, author, professor emeritus at Harvard University, Alan Dershowitz, who may also be on that list. What do you think about this list?
Well, I'm going to be on the list, of course. I was his lawyer, and I represented him in making the plea agreement that eventually landed him in jail on 2 counts. So, of course, the legal team flew down at his plane for legal meetings and court appearances and meetings with the U.S. Attorney's Office. So, of course, I'm on the list, and along with other lawyers and doctors and people who had completely innocent associations with him. I was one who pushed very hard to get everything released. I want every single document released. I'm concerned that the judge picked and chose which documents to release and which to withhold, and that would be wrong because that could create misimpressions. I want every single document to be released. I waived all rights of privacy because I knew I did nothing wrong and that the truth would set me free, and confirm what I've said from day one, that I never did anything that was inappropriate. I flew down with on his plane to see, with my nephew, to see a satellite launch. I flew with Senator John Glenn on his plane to meet President Shimon Peres of Israel. This all was, of course, before he was in any way accused of anything wrong. Once he was accused, I terminated any personal relationship with him, but of course maintained a professional lawyer-client relationship.
So let me ask you, can I ask you something? Why should some people be concerned if they're on this list? You know, there was a list sort of released a few years ago when Virginia Giuffre was in court. Is this going to be the same list? Is this going to be a different list?
Well, I hope it's not just a list of names, because that really promotes guilt by association. I hope it creates context and says why the name is on the list. Were they being accused of something? If so, were the accusations credible? As you probably know, in my case, I was accused by a woman, and then she ultimately admitted that she may have misidentified me and mistaken me for somebody else and withdrew her lawsuit against me. Others may be in the same situation. I suspect the vast majority of them just had innocent associations.
Well, listen, there's nothing innocent with Jeffrey Epstein. Let's be honest here. I mean, it seemed like he had some of these people blackmailed. And that's why they hung out with him. They were giving him a lot of money. He had a portrait of Bill Clinton in a dress in his office at his home. Like, what was all that about?
I have no idea. I never saw any portraits of Bill Clinton, or I never knew anything about any blackmail. But if there is proof of blackmail, the public ought to know that. Nothing should be hidden.
So if for the judge that's overseeing this, Judge Preska, who also said in this order that most of the people's names released on this were already public, we're not seeing anything new here, but you've also said that she has not released everything. Why is that?
I don't know, and she should. There are things in there that are very important to about the credibility of accusations, about people who made...
You have no idea. You have no idea why she might be keeping that close to her.
I have no idea, but she ought to make that public. She ought to release that. She should not be in the position of just picking and choosing privately which document should be released and then leaving it to others to make false accusations or guilt by...
Let me just ask you a question, because I know a lot of stuff going on with Jimmy Kimmel and Aaron Rodgers. In your field of legal profession, Kimmel wants to sue Rodgers for saying, hey, you know, he may not want that list to come out. Is there any legal basis for that suit to take court?
Sure. And if somebody lies about somebody else, there's a legal basis for bringing defamation suits. And I hope that people will bring defamation suits if they are lied about. That's an important part of our system of checks and balances. People aren't allowed to simply make false accusations. If you're a public figure, you have to prove malice, and that's sometimes a difficult burden to overcome, but the law does provide for remedies for false accusations or guilt by accusation. So I just think that we ought to look at this. And one point I want to make, a lot of the people who want this list produced and who are really upset at people who had associations with Jeffrey Epstein are absolutely silent about the rapes of thousands of hundreds of Jewish women in Israel on October 8th. Some of these same feminist groups like Me Too except if you're a Jew, seems to be the mantra. Many of these radical feminist groups who think that being on the Epstein list is the worst sin in the world won't even condemn people who we know have raped, mutilated, beheaded, kidnapped, sexually assaulted people. The hypocrisy around not making claims or not protesting the rapes of Jewish women is appalling. And I want to see another list produced. I want to see a list produced of every feminist radical who wants the Epstein list produced, but who hasn't said a word of criticism against Hamas. That's a list I really want to see. I don't think we're going to see that.
Very interesting. I know you have a new book out. It's called The War Against the Jews, How to End Hamas Barbarism.